Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon, as well as the latest episode of Blindspot. Starting off with Lethal Weapon, more continuing of the development of Roger and Martin's relationship, or partnership. The fact is we constantly have Roger kind of point out the fact is that Martin's looks kind of a bit like a hobo, kind of disrespecting him in this sense, and just like, Martin's kind of, first it kind of got brought up because he was washing his clothes and the dock is there and she's surfing, which is kind of interesting finding out that she surfs. But also, just because Martin doesn't have a washing machine, he lives out in a trailer, so basically he's not the cleanest cut person that he could possibly be, so that kind of turns into a whole thing. Especially he's looking at Roger's like, wait a minute, after all that, like you're there with your pristine clothes and everything. He's like, yeah, I get like 5 different outfits here. And even asked the captain, he's like, yes, of course I do. It's like, and you got him feeling like the odd one out. I even love the scene when Trish is asking him to feed their youngest, and it's like, oh yeah, taste it. It's like, oh, that's good. That's actually good. He sits there and eats it, and she's seen him eat it. He's like, what? She wasn't going to eat it. So it's almost adorable how just beautiful how that all kind of balances out. I mean, it kind of balances out with kind of the heaviness of the episode. I mean, especially when it comes to their partnership, because the whole RJ kind of hanging out with his friend Marcus and getting pulled over, and him having the audacity, like I was like, oh crap, you're in trouble. You're gonna find out the car is stolen and whatnot. But it was like, no, he didn't, because it didn't even go that far, because he used his dad's name and back. Like it's like, oh yeah, my dad is Roger Murtaugh. He's a detective. It's like, wow, name dropping like that. You sounds a little like, it's like, why would you do that? That's so slimy. It's because it's like you're using your dad's name to kind of get out of a situation. It's like a situation you shouldn't have been in the first place. But it's like, I don't know. Because he already knew he did wrong, because it's like, if it wasn't that big of a deal, he wouldn't have used his dad's name. It's just kind of just because like, hey, my dad's got a little clout, so like, kind of let me off. I mean, the officer kind of did, but that ended up pissing Roger off. I mean, especially because the fact is that RJ called Riggs instead of him. But I mean, you had Riggs actually being kind of the cool uncle, like, because that's kind of, Roger kind of brought it up. It's like, oh yeah, you are kind of the cool uncle or whatever. But Riggs was actually telling him, it's like, no, you got to tell them the truth. It's like, you are baby. You're their baby. You will always be their baby. They love you. Your parents, they're always going to treat you that way because you're so important to them. So, you want to be a man. You don't want them treating like your boy. Be a man and tell them the truth. Well, he told them the truth, but at the same time, Roger heard it from the officer that pulled him over. And it ended a situation with him getting super pissed at Riggs. Now, like I said, I get where Roger's coming from, because Roger's like, for one, it's a situation that could have turned ugly. Especially because in this episode, the whole aspect of why they moved to where they are. For one, their mom, Trish, wanted them to move there, because of the school, but, also because it's just a nicer neighborhood, nicer community and stuff like that. I mean, there's a community aspect to where they originally from, Sherwood, but there's still just a lot of stuff there that's best left behind. It's kind of like, hey, we're here, enjoy, kind of almost the peace and tranquility, which is actually what kind of started Roger kind of really getting invested in the case, because it's like they came to my neighborhood and they basically started all this crap. It's like, I'm getting them just because of that. But then because it's like here where they're currently living, he thought there'd be no problem, and it just like, because the situation with RJ could have gone really bad, and he got pissed at Riggs because it's like you're stepping in like the cool uncle and everything, tell my kids to drink, get high and stuff like that, and it's like, I'm the parent, like that could have turned ugly. I should have been informed about it. And I get, like I said, I get where Roger's coming from, because he is a parent. Riggs should have informed him. I mean, later on, Riggs admits that he messed up, but you got to give Riggs like some credit too, because Riggs did it. He actually went there and picked up RJ and dropped him off home. Roger kind of took it a little far and was like, you know what? The reason why you're acting like this is because you don't have anything in your life to love. And it's just like, ooh. And then Martin was kind of like, nice. And you see why your kids don't want to tell you anything. And he punches Riggs. I mean, not super hard, just kind of a little tap, but still. I mean, it wasn't a tap because he's talking about the fact that he's got 2 cracked teeth. But, it was still kind of a bit of a wallop. So I was just like, that kind of broke my heart. I was like, man, that it came down to that. And he even said the next words being like, don't even involve yourself in my family anymore. Like I said, Riggs had the best of intentions. He's even the one that told RJ to kind of fess up because RJ didn't want to. But I even like that lame excuse he's got. I was like, oh yeah, I was with this girl. She was like, I was like, she's like, It's like, and Riggs was just like, you know what? I can already tell you weren't with a woman. You were doing something you had no business doing. So, but I mean, it took them finally going to like, seeing the doc or stuff, kind of having a little, almost like a couples counseling or partnership counseling, just kind of talking with everything through. Like, Riggs admitted he should have told Roger and everything. And Roger kind of appreciates the fact that he's like, well, at least thank you for saying this. It's just like they're kind of mending the fences a little bit. And even she even says like, kind of say something. And it just like Riggs is talking about how beautiful. He's like, that bald is beautiful, telling Roger that he looks good. And Roger's talking about, in a certain sunlight, your mustache thing you got going on doesn't make you look the most like, ridiculous. And then the doctor's like, okay, you know what, just get the hell out of here. They're laughing and they walk away. I just really like the final scene the most, where it's just like, hey, we came to get, they at the barbershop joking around and stuff. It's just like, he's like, yo, take care of them. He's like, family. And I was like, yes, that's it. I was like, that's what I wanted. And you kind of see it on Riggs' face and he kind of smiles. Because that's why Riggs did what he did, because he is somewhat like the cool uncle. He does have someone to love. He has Roger and his family. They're the closest thing that he has to the family. I mean, he has in-laws, but, he can't bring himself to be near his in-laws after everything that's happened, with Miranda and everything. And it's just, Roger's the only person you really see him kind of like. Roger kind of sees the real side of Martin, a side of him that he doesn't really show anyone, even the doc, so it's just, I really love that moment, just kind of like, yeah, because it's like the moment Roger said like, oh, you don't have nothing to care about, the moment I was already thinking in the back of my mind, I was like, he has you and your family, you guys are a lot to him, y'all kind of keep him stable, you kind of the reason why he probably, like, I mean, sad to say, probably the reason why he hasn't killed himself yet. I mean, he already said in the first episode why he couldn't do it is because if he did it, Miranda would, kind of be ashamed of him if he did it, so. I mean, that's just talking about that. There's also just a big part of the episode about the whole, crime being like basically these break-ins. I thought the story was going to be, it's like, oh yeah, there's this dealership, and that secretly this dealership is, there's a crew of thieves that kind of work on it, but it ends up turning out to be like a valet service that basically hooks up these thieves who that like basketball coach was behind and everything. I was really sad when that whole situation went down when that girl Haley ended up dying, because like Riggs is telling her to stay in the closet, but she's like, no, I can see the door, I can just run to it, and he's like, no, and she did it anyway. And ended up dying, and it's just like, it breaks your heart when you see her sister like crying like that, and it's just like, dude. And I love what Rick said. She was like, you were on the phone with my sister. I bet she was scared, wasn't she? And he was like, no, she was actually very brave, and was just kind of like, dude, that just sucks. I wish that situation didn't end the way it did. I mean, the main reason why it did was because he wasn't wearing his mask and the guy shot her, because she would have been able to identify him. Riggs kind of gave him a little bit at the end, kind of punched him a little bit, but still, that's not enough. I kind of figured, most likely that Marcus might have something to do with it. Just the fact is that he tied into the story like that. Just like, the fact is he had that car and everything. I'm like, you're with that crew, aren't you? Like I said, I thought it was a dealership thing, because he's like, oh yeah, my job. I mean, he never actually went in specifics about his job, but that was kind of interesting. I like how they broke that, valet guy is like, oh, they'd like, I guess you're gonna have to go in lock up, and they're gonna like you. Look at you, you look fit, you look like you're in good shape. Let you choose your partner. Don't let your partner choose you. Oh yeah, because they would just they get into you and just kind of breaking him down like that. And also, probably the funniest part of this episode was the whole situation with that guy. What's his name? Rojan. I love the fact that it kept trying to mess with him. It's like Rojan, rolling the R's, was like Rojan. It's just, but the fact is they had to fight him naked. kept tasing him, but he kept smacking him around. It cannot be the easiest thing fighting a naked man. I especially felt bad for Riggs, because even had Roger kind of looking at him like, whoa, when Riggs was between his legs and his situation was happening all in Riggs' like head area, face area. And Roger even joked about it at the end of the episode. It's like, we don't talk about that situation with civilians, so. And then also, like, the whole fact is that Cruz, who was with the gang unit, ended up transferring over to their unit, which I was finding that very surprising. But I also found very surprising the fact is that Bailey had such a problem. I was like, why does she have a problem? What's up with her? But it turns out it's just because of the job situation. It's like she worked like 4 years to get to her position, and he just kind of transfers over like it's nothing. She kind of feels a little cheated. But, it seems like, throughout the episode, it's kind of like every time he's saying something, she's quickly to turn him around. It's like, oh, yeah, actually, oh, you don't got the answer? I do. Kind of like booyah in his face, and kind of like, anytime he's like can't get the results, she kind of cuts him off. But at the end of the episode, it kind of seemed like they kind of came together, worked together. So he's like, I can't figure something out. Can you help me with it? So I'm curious to see where that goes. I don't know why, because my brain automatically goes romantic angle and everything, especially when people don't like each other at first. It doesn't even have to be like that, but I'm me, because I try to hook, like in my mind, I try to hook everyone up. So I'm like, hey, that kind of be a kind of a thing. Like part of me was also thinking like this scandalous aspect of it. It's like, oh, they hate each other, and then by the end of the episode, you end up finding out they slept together or something. That's exactly where my brain went. I don't know why. I just did. I am curious. I'm wondering, will Marcus be a character that kind of pops up in future episodes or not? It seemed like it was just kind of a situation to kind of show RJ to kind of be grateful with the situation that he has. That basically, if he wasn't careful, he could, because even Roger pointed out the fact is that, that could just as easily be RJ in that bed and not just Marcus. Like I said, that's the whole reason why they moved away from Sherwood and stuff like that. But, Trish says, like, the bad things happen everywhere. It's like, yes, in some places it's less likely to happen, but you just never know the way life is. You can get mixed up in something without even realizing it. And so it does make me wonder, is it just kind of there as that life lesson, or will we kind of see him a little bit more in the future? I'm very curious. And now moving on to this week's episode of Blindspot. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the Reed situation right off the bat. I knew it. I literally called it last episode. Granted, the situation didn't go down the way I thought it would 100%. I got like 90% of it, just because you can see that coming from a mile away. But I wasn't actually expecting him to be standing over Joan's body at the end of the episode. I was like, I expected, it's like, the moment he threatened him, I was like, okay, there it is. You're threatening him, saying like he won't get away with this. There's witnesses. I was like, okay, you're breaking into his house. You're going to leave, and then, you're going to get a report that he's dead. And then it's like, oh man, all these people saw me around his house, especially because a cop stopped by Reed's car to wake him up to say like, hey, you can't sleep here. So, but I'm still sure that's going to come up in the situation. Luckily it was Tasha who came to the scene first, but still, it's not going to look good. It's not, like, part of me is thinking, like, if Tasha's going to come across it but try to help him, I don't think she's going to cover this up. She's going to believe Reed when he says that he didn't do it, which he didn't do it. He had plenty of motive to, especially because he put the tape in. Whether he actually saw it or not, we don't know. I'm very curious to see what happened. Most likely something probably did happen, and that's going to be more evidence against him. But most likely my money's on Freddy, because Freddy's the only victim we've kind of really gotten to, other person that he's done that to, the one that we've kind of gotten to know, especially because things kind of spiraled out of control for him since, Reed kind of came back into his life telling him, like, yo, this is happening, and, Freddie probably was just out of, like, he just couldn't take it anymore. He's just like, nah, after everything, the coach did to him, he just had to take matters into his own head, because he wouldn't be satisfied until that was all dealt with. That's my interpretation of it. Maybe there's someone else, but right now my mind is set on Freddy. It's like, oh, of course, all the evidence is pointing to Reed, because neither one of them actually explained this, even to Kurt. If they had told Kurt, maybe Kurt would be able to help them out with this situation. Like, he could have done something, pull some strings or something, being kind of the head honcho around there. So, but like I said, I saw that situation coming. And now another thing. Well, before I get to like obviously the main plot of the episode, just gonna skate around everything else. For one, there is the whole Borden and Patterson situation. I thought that was kind of cute and adorable. He's like, "Oh, do you want to go into work together?" And he's like, "No, I mean, if you don't want to, if I'm moving too fast," she's like, "No." And even when she's like partway brushing her teeth, got toothpaste and stuff in her mouth, he even kisses her. I thought that was like, "Oh, that's so cute and adorable." But you see, Patterson's kind of freaking out a little bit. I mean, because it's the first relationship she's been in since David. She hasn't brought him up because she did move on, but that's still something I feel like Borden isn't 100%, cognitive of. What you would think, as a psychologist, you would kind of catch up on, think that's kind of like not, I mean, I don't know. It's been a little while, so maybe she is okay now. But I guess you can't stop your feelings. You have feelings for someone, you have feelings for them. So I want them to stay together because they're kind of a cute couple. But at the same time, I want Borden to kind of slow it down because he's kind of probably going at a faster rate than like Patterson's used to. I mean, kind of Patterson's probably I say probably. I mean, mainly because of the way she's acting, it makes it seem like she might not have been in that many relationships. Like, David might have been like one of the few boyfriends she ever had. Well, anything like really, really serious and whatnot. So it probably doesn't, this whole situation probably isn't easy for her because she kind of made it seem like before that, like, because she was a little nervous. She get that feeling in the pit of her stomach, like, even him just asking her to dinner. So something that's like even showing up to work together, it's kind of like, whoa, it's like, this is crazy. He's moving fast, even though it's not necessarily fast. But like I said, even I can feel like, yo, Borden, kind of slow down, bro. You're scaring her away. She likes you, dude, but just take it nice and slow. And then there's also the pessimist part of my brain that's like, maybe he's actually the mole and this is just pushing. He's doing this whole situation to push more on his cover or whatever. I hope he's not the mole because that's the storyline element we still kind of like, it kind of gets thrown in there a little bit here and there. It's like every time you turn around, there's like a freaking mole, especially in the FBI, because it's like, oh, you thought you cleared all of them. You thought Jane was the last one. Apparently not, so I just hope it's not him because it's like that would screw Patterson over so much. It's like she lost David, she's starting to like Borden, and it's like to find out he's like mole or something. Oh, that would just suck. Like I said, it seems like everything's point towards it might be Nas, but I don't think so. And definitely with everything that's going on with everybody's life being hectic the way it is, there's no way it's Reed and there's no way it's Tasha. So the only person left, not unless it is, I don't even think it's a possibility, but that'd be the real kick in the teeth. You find out it's like, oh yeah, it's actually Patterson. What if you end up finding out the fact is that it's like they set it up to make it look like Patterson, like Borden is the spy, but he sets Patterson up like, oh my God, I can't believe she was a spy this entire time. It's like, yo, everyone on the team is like, we got it. Is this real? It can't be real. It can't be Patterson. And even Borden's like, I was with her. I didn't see it. I was too blinded by emotions trying to play the victim. I don't know. I think that would be sick, dude. I mean, even more so is the fact is if she actually was the mole. It's like, I don't know. I mean, because the fact is the mole hasn't been activated yet. And the sad thing is, what is most likely going to come down to is the mole. The way they make it seem like in the first episode of the season was kind of like, hey, the mole could be anybody, like of the people we know. But at the same time, it's kind of like, there's no way it's going to be someone, most likely it's going to be like a character we're not that familiar with. I don't remember the actor's name. He's the one he popped up in the first episode of the season. He popped up a little bit last season, but he's the one that kind of basically handed the position over to Kurt. I know him as, he played Kurt Connor in like some of the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, I think maybe like 2 or 3 maybe. That's one of many things he's done. He's been in a lot of stuff, so I mean, there's that, just me going really extensive on that, I apologize. But I mean, kind of focusing on the main plot a little bit, them going up against the Irish mob, that's kind of crazy. Especially that whole situation. You got the quote unquote head of the Irish mob, Patrick O'Malley, and they bring him in asking all these questions, and he's like, yo, you think I'm the head of the... No, I've never been the head of the family. I'm kind of the face, the one, like, the one behind all of this, the one behind the Irish mob is the senator. Because first they find out, it's like, oh yeah, he's like, yeah, you think I'd be dumb enough to use a gun that have registered under my name to try and kill someone related, the senator? Which in itself, that's kind of a crazy thing. It's like the senator is like connected to the mob, like they are family. There's families and friends that he helped take down and stuff like that. I think I don't remember what exactly relationship they had, but I think it's like him, the senator and Patrick were cousins, I think. I don't know. But then he's like, yo, I wouldn't be dumb enough to use that. I mean, especially I like the fact is how the whole setup was. It's like, oh, I use a camera and there's a gun hidden in it while I'm taking pictures and shooting a bullet. But nonetheless, it turns out that it's like, oh yeah, the senator faked the whole thing, publicity stunt. It's like, oh, make himself look like a hero, like he survived a hit from the mob, especially because he cracks down on the mob so hard. And then Patrick drops the other bomb. It's like, well, the reason why he was able to get someone to fake a hit on him is because he runs it. I was just the face of the mob. He's the one that's always ran it. It is the current leader, always has been. So that was kind of a nice twist. I really like the fact is that they were kind of when they were getting the tapes that Patrick had accumulated kind of to take the senator down if he needed to. Because basically he had backed away from the mob. He was sick. He had cancer. He only had a couple months left. And he just kind of wanted to back away from that life, which led to an interesting conversation between Nas and Nas. Like I said, the edit and anything kind of keeps slipping me up. Nas and Tasha was basically like, oh, do you really believe this whole change act? And Tasha kind of brings up it's like if you're raised by wolves, you're going to end up like a wolf. And you kind of see it affecting Jane because it kind of ties back into something, what was it, the first or second episode that Reed actually said. It's like, those people are her family. Her Shepard's her mom, Roman is her brother, and it's like, oh, being kind of sociopaths is kind of runs in the family, so obviously it's going to trickle down to her. So it kind of brought that kind of back to her a little bit, which was interesting that she was the one that kind of was able to convince Patrick to be like, yo, I'm going to kind of turn on them. Is she basically brought up the fact that I get it, you're loyal, you're struggling with loyalty because it's like you're not part of that world anymore, but you're still loyal to your family and whatnot. She's like, she struggles with that herself, the whole FBI and Sandstorm situation, especially because her own family's part of Sandstorm. So she knew exactly what she was talking about. But she's like, you see the situation you're in right now? They framed you. And when you're in trouble, the only person you have here is you. They're not here to help you. They're just going to let you take the fall for it, let you spend whatever little time you have left, in prison. How messed up is that? Where's the loyalty for you? And, it got to him. Sadly, they ended up getting the tapes, but sadly, Patrick ended up sacrificing himself, mainly because, Allie was hurt, so he wanted to protect her, which that was kind of like a crazy thing to me, too, finding out, Allie's connection to them. It's like, she grew up around that world, she grew up around, mob people and stuff like that as a kid. I mean, probably obviously at the time she didn't realize that, but you grow up in certain neighborhoods, you grow up around certain people, you don't realize their affiliation and stuff like that, especially when you're younger. I mean, her best friend is I think was Patrick's sister is what she was talking about. So it's like the last time she saw Patrick was a year ago. It's not like hey, I got older, I became a marshal and I cut ties with him. It's like, no, his sister is my best friend. I mean, she's not connected to that whole world, and I happen to see him at barbecues and stuff like that. So what? And she just made it seem so casual. They even having that casual conversation in the interrogation room, and she's like, "This is Kurt Weller, Mike Kurt." And he's like, "Oh, that Kurt, that guy." I knew there had to be a reason why I didn't like you. And then the whole situation came out about Allie's pregnancy, which Nas kind of knew. I don't know whether that was because it was kind of announced on the buds. I mean, I can only assume so. I mean, because the fact is, Kurt didn't make any mention of it being whoa, how do you know that she's pregnant? So obviously must have heard a conversation between Jane and Allie. But that's kind of an interesting way to find out. It's just okay, crap, I'm in trouble. I'm pregnant and it's Kurt's baby, which I feel is this really, I mean, I can understand saying you're pregnant. I understand that, but I was like, I don't know that it's Kurt's baby too. I don't know why that became real. I know I'm nitpicking, but it's just, I feel bad for Jane because I want Jane and Kurt. I want Jert, I guess. Kane? I don't know. I think Kane sounds better than Jert. I don't know. Because it's one of those things, usually people kind of ship people together and kind of give them names like that. I don't really get on a lot of places on the internet. So I don't know what their relationship name is. I don't know. Let's go with Kane for now. I want Kane because I like it. I mean, especially when you found out she was hurt, you could tell it on her face that she was hurt with the whole situation. Because it's she's like, it's Kurt's baby. You kind of see that look on her face. Even when after after it was all said and done, Kurt was like, "Thank you," and she's like, "Oh, you're going to be a great dad," and he's like, "Oh, I wish I believed that," and they walked away, and you kind of see it on her face because even Patterson's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah," and it's like, "Oh," it's like she's heartbroken because it's like. It makes you wonder, does Jane think there's going to be something between them? Because they're not getting back together. But I guess no matter what the case may be, even if they're not getting back together, that's still something that they have that him and Jane will never have. It's like, it's unspoken, but they obviously still have feelings for each other. Look, trust me, like, I've known it since episode one, you know. I even at the beginning of this season, I meant specifically episode one of this season, but it still can apply to episode one of last season too when he thought that she was Taylor Shaw. But, he has very complicated feelings about her now. Just his feelings for her got super complicated. He does like her, but he's conflicted on how the fact because he likes her, because it's just, the whole betrayal and everything. It's not easy to come back from that, especially because she played a role in a lot of bad stuff going down, inadvertently, Mayfair getting killed. So I don't know, man. But like I said, it's just because they can have a normal family dynamic. In her case, she can't because she's not a normal person, doesn't have her memory. She's connected to all of this. She, with Kurt, Kurt can never have a normal life with her. It's kind of what I'm thinking. But interestingly, because she had Patterson look up that ring, which I'll get to that whole thing in a second, but just focusing on the ring, couldn't find anything. But, that got her calling that art dude from, what was that, last week's episode? The week before last? Wait. No. It was last week's episode where they kind of went undercover at that gallery. Yeah, with the CIA lady that was basically killing people. The dude she met, Oliver Kind. I was wondering where that was going to play a role in it, and it's like, okay, now she's going to talk to him to kind of get information about the ring because he's very knowledgeable and stuff like that. Plus getting a little flirtatious on the phone, being like, oh yeah, we can talk about water. I mean, we don't have to talk about, water or whatever. She's like, just, whenever you get a chance coming back. You kind of see her kind of rolling her eyes at herself, just like, oh, I'm such an idiot for talking like this. I'm so stupid. That's going to be very interesting. It makes you wonder, will there ever be a situation where we see Kurt getting a little jealous because it's like, whoa, she's spending all this time with this Oliver dude. It's for information purposes, but you kind of get the feeling like they kind of hit it off a little bit the first time they talked. They were just like, oh, Jane was all smiles and everything. So it's like, oh, I guess when it's all said and done, I can hope that no matter what paths they are on, that they eventually find their way to each other. It's like, I want him and Ali to have their kid and let it be healthy and they be a family. But the fact of the matter is, she even said it herself when she told Kurt that she was pregnant. It's like, they don't need to be together. Yes, they need to be parents and work together, but them getting back together as a couple is kind of a bad thing for both of them. So I don't know. That's kind of where my mind is heading on that situation. Things are going to get very interesting between everybody when that kind of comes about. What I also find very fascinating is the story that Shepard kind of told her at the beginning of the episode when Jane was talking, which it was just kind of a small thing, but it really means a lot too. Is the fact is that Jane ended up cutting her hair back to kind of the length that was at the beginning of the series. Which, there's so many layers to that because it's like when her hair, her having longer hair is more of a kind of, I guess, it's for one, it's a fresh start because her having her hair long like that, it's just kind of a reminder of everything that she's been through over this time, the 3 months that the CIA basically tortured her to get information out of her. But it's also, I feel like you can also look at it as she had long hair as Remy, she had short hair as Jane, and maybe it's her trying to find some middle ground, trying to almost figure out who she was as Remy, but also figure out who she is now. And ended up getting a new memory back, basically about a doctor that saved her after the attack on Orion. Shepard obviously tells her, oh yeah, you were on a cargo ship. Sadly, the doctor died because, enemies came into the town she was in. She ended up sadly dying. You got on a cargo ship, blah, 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 blah. But we had that conversation with Roman at the end of the episode where it's kind of like Shepard's freaking out. And she's like, she's remembering. The fact is, Shepard's already lied to her. So if she remembers things differently than Shepard told her, then things are going to get ugly. It's like she will lose all trust in them. Which I kind of figure that's what the case might be. I'm thinking what most likely happened is either most likely they came in to get Jane back, well, Remy back, and they couldn't leave any witnesses, so they took them out. Or maybe she was a target. Maybe Remy asked them not to kill her, but they did it anyway. And because Remy had left, and then they killed the doctor and maybe some other people behind Remy's back, and it's just like, because Remy, Jane is remembering. She's like, she doesn't remember who she is really, but she just remembers that the person was important to her. So that's when I'm thinking why Shepherd would be so scared of her learning the truth. The question is, on what level did they? Obviously, they had to have something behind her dying. So was it because they killed her just kind of they need no witnesses? Was she a target, or did they just want to kind of cut all connections to Remy having any attachments to anyone because it would interfere with her assignment? Or was she kind of going soft at the time? It's like spending too much time with the doctor kind of made her grow soft. Because the fact is that she was still working with Sandstorm makes it seem like Remy, whatever the situation is, Remy herself never found out, or maybe she did find out. No, because they were saying because it would be part of her memory. So obviously she knew whatever the situation may be, and she, her goals were still aligned with theirs, so she'd be willing to work with them. But if whatever the situation is, if Jane gets her memory back, she's going to be reluctant to trust them. So it just popped in my head. Maybe they even convinced Jane/Remy to actually do it herself to kill the dog. So I don't know. We do have Roman saying that he is going to bring her on their next mission. That basically it's going to incite her a little bit, always, like as he said before, that he was going to try and convince her to see the real, kind of remind her why they're doing what they're doing, kind of see why they're on the mission that they're on. I mean, let's not also forget his other words in the past episode being like, I will find your rabbit and make your rabbit bleed, that whole situation, trying to push her to kind of turn back into who she was before, remind her who she is, remind her what she's fighting for, that no matter whether or not she trusts them or not, she won't, if the mission goes successful, it'll push her to be on finally choosing the right side. And like I said, it seems like, I don't know. It was so clear cut in the beginning of the season for Jane. I mean, at the beginning of last season, at the beginning of the series, clear cut being a good guy, and then you see her in the later parts of the season flip flopping a lot, not sure who to trust, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and now she continues being on that path. It seems like more so than anything, she wants to trust in the FBI because she's more familiar with them. They're more of a family to her than Shepherd and Roman are, even though there is that past. But that's the thing. The past is rearing its ugly head, so that complicates things even more. It's just fascinating episode, fascinating developments. Also, final note, just clicked in my head. They were talking about some guy named Douglas who basically exposed the NSA. Basically, Mayfair knew where he was. In fact, they were working together. I don't know whether that's something I'm supposed to be aware of, acknowledging, knowing who that is. It didn't click in my head, so I'll have to wait till next episode to find out what that was all about. So, like I said, very good episode. Can't wait to see more. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.